started, you'll print out the map found in the description box below. Print it out at 75% scale. Tape it together and number your states. Then you'll place your map face down by a light source. I taped mine to my slider window, and it is super important that you place it face down. Next, you'll take the heat and bond and you'll lay that over the map and trace out the states. Make sure to number each state according to the numbers you gave your map pattern. This will be really helpful in steps later on. Next, you'll cut out each of the states. Now you're going to iron the heat and bond states to the wrong side of the fabric, the back of the fabric, and cut out each of the states. Next, you're going to remove the paper backing from the states and place that face down on the drop cloth. Next, take your iron that is set to medium and hold it over the fabric for a few seconds to make sure that it has adhered. Then continue removing the paper backing from the states and placing them face down according to the map. And for these states that are smaller, I found it easier to work in sections, placing them down and ironing several of them at a time. One tip I have is to lift the iron and press it in place. Try not to slide the iron to keep any of the states from shifting. So each time I lifted and placed it back down, I found this to be really helpful. Once I got to this point, I wanted to be sure that each of the states lined up, so I worked in larger sections. The states in this area are larger pieces, and this worked really well. So I ended up removing the paper backing from the rest of the states to make sure all of it lined up, and then ironed in sections, following the same steps. I used a charm pack for my fabrics, and my charm pack had 42 pieces. So for the remainder of the pieces, I just used fabric scraps I had on hand. You could use a layer cake square. You could also use a 1/4 yard of fabric. There are 7 states that were too large to fit the charm pack squares, and I made sure that I used the fabric scraps for those pieces. But other than the 7 states, all of the fabric states fit the charm pack. I continued removing the paper backing and placing the states down on the drop cloth. I did have to shift some of them a little bit to make sure they fit and the edges lined up. Then I took my iron and placed it down on the states and held it there for a few seconds to make sure that the adhesive was secure. And I lifted it and continued doing this until all the states had been ironed down in place. Another tip I have is I did not cut out Alaska and Hawaii until the very end. Those states have some small pieces and I didn't want to lose any of them, so I waited until the very end to cut them out and place them down, and this worked really well. After all the fabric is ironed down, the next step is to cut out our drop cloth. My frame was 40 inches wide, so I cut my fabric at 41.5 inches wide. That left 3/4 of an inch on either side for the hem. I cut my wall hanging at 29.5 inches long. Just make sure that your corners are square so your edges will be nice and straight. So here's the wall hanging all cut out at 41.5 inches wide and 29.5 inches long. To keep this project entirely no-sew, I used Heat & Bond Ultra Hold iron-on adhesive for the hem. You'll take the iron-on adhesive and you want to place this on the back side of the wall hanging as close to the edge as you can. I ironed mine as I went and didn't cut it until the very edge. Now it's time to remove the paper backing. You'll want to carefully remove the paper backing very slowly to make sure that all of it removes completely. Now you'll take the edge that has the adhesive on it and fold it over 1/2 inch and hold your iron in place to adhere the fabric. Repeat these same steps on all 4 sides. Now it's time to use the magnetic frame and hang your wall hanging. Your fabric map is complete. Enjoy.